Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which if you're unfamiliar with what that series is, it's just basically one that I started recently where I do my best to explain everything that I can about how a certain image of mine was created. In this video, we're going to be going over this image on the screen right here of Julia that I took recently over in Sun River, Oregon, which is absolutely beautiful during the Sony Candle 3.0 trip. I've already made quite a few videos in this series going over the images that are on the screen right now. All of these images, in case you want to know more about how I created them, you can check out the link to the playlist of all these videos in the top right corner of the screen, or use the link to the playlist of these videos in the description area below. And also real quickly, if you guys aren't already following me on Instagram, you can definitely check me out at FJH Photo. I tend to make every single post very educational. I share my photos, the behind the scenes. I'm going to start sharing the straight out of camera photos again on there. I also show a picture without the lighting so you guys can see exactly what the light did. And I do my best to make every post helpful. So if you guys don't mind following me on there, that'd be really appreciated. Okay, so the very first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that I used an ND filter for this image instead of my usual high-speed sync because it's pretty out of the norm. So on the day that I did this photo shoot with Julia, a couple of hours earlier, I did another photo shoot with another model by the name of Megan. And it was at that photo shoot that I realized that, hey, high-speed sync isn't working. And I actually found out the solution, and I want to share that with you guys so that you guys if you ever run into that issue, you guys can know what to do. This issue is only pertaining to Sony users, so in case you use Sony and you have issues with high-speed sync working, this might be the solution for you. It's actually a pretty easy solution in that the bottom of the transmitter for Sony users, this one right here, this transmitter right here, it actually has these gold strips that you could probably see right now. I'm not sure if it's in focus, but there's these gold strips on the bottom of the transmitter that need to be exactly where they are aligned straight. And my transmitter was actually bent out of place. And another friend of mine by the name of Jason Vincent is actually the one who found out this and let me know, hey, maybe this is why it's not working. He's actually the one that corrected this issue. All I had to do is just move one of those gold strips back into these grooves that the gold strips are supposed to be in for high-speed sync to work. But I'm actually really glad that I didn't get to use high-speed sync that day, because if you guys didn't know, high-speed sync actually cuts down the power of your light when you use high-speed sync. When you use an ND filter, you don't experience that power loss, so you really maximize the light that's coming out of your speed light or your strobe. During this photo shoot, because I was using an ND filter and I hadn't used one in such a long time, I actually did kind of feel that this light was putting more than it usually does, because I pretty much always use high-speed sync and I never use ND filters. If you're curious about how much power loss you experience when you use high-speed sync, I can't tell you guys exactly because I don't know. I haven't checked out all the speed lights that I have and all the strobes that I have to see how much you lose once you enter high-speed sync, but there is always going to be a power drop because of the way that a high-speed sync operates. For this specific shoot, I used a 6-stop ND filter with a circular polarizer by the company Breakthrough Photography. The reason why I don't really use ND filters and I prefer high-speed sync is just because of the convenience, and you also don't have that risk of all the different things that could happen with a cheap ND filter or just ND filters in general. What I mean by convenience is that if you use ND filters and you have a lot of different lenses, you're gonna have to get different ND filters for all of those different lenses. There's actually a solution to this that I found out from my friend Rob Hall earlier this year, which is actually getting an ND filter for the sensor that you can actually clip onto the sensor, and even when you switch different lenses, it'll still be just on the sensor, so you don't have to buy ND filters for every single lens. I'm gonna get this ND filter. It should be coming anytime soon. I plan to make a video on it, but in case you haven't seen Rob's video where he describes what I'm describing right now, you can check out his video in the top right corner of the screen right now. There's so much things about ND filters and I don't want to talk about them right now and make this video extra long, so I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the other things that are involved with this photo, including the lighting and the gear that I used as well. Actually, before I start to talk about the lighting and the gear, I want to give a little bit more context about how this shoot was organized, because it definitely is out of the norm for me. As I mentioned before, I took this photo of Julia at the Sony Candle 3.0 trip that happened last month in August, and it was at this event that they had a lot of different photo opportunities, and one opportunity that I really took advantage of was getting the chance to work with a lot of different models. And it was actually the day of this photo shoot that I realized I hadn't worked with a redhead before, so I really wanted to work with Julia, and I'm glad I got the chance to do so. She was actually so popular that they only had one slot out of the whole day, which was at 4 o'clock to work with her, so that's why I chose 4 o'clock to shoot with Julia. Another quick thing that I wanted to mention is I got the chance to work with some amazing photographers and YouTubers, One of them is Irene Rudnick, who is an amazing natural light photographer. She didn't stay too long at the photo shoot because she had been shooting all that day. So although she was only there for a brief period of time, I wanted to say another thanks to Irene, even though I said one in the last video. So thanks to Irene for joining, and you guys definitely need to check out her channel. The other two YouTubers that I got to work with are Dan and Sally Watson. They also have a YouTube channel that you guys need to check out with a lot of helpful tips and tricks and reviews. So big thanks to Dan, Sally, and Irene for joining me on the shoot. It was a lot of fun. Alright, so the gear that I use is the Sony a7R IV with the 50-1.4 Zeiss lens with the Godox AD200 Pro, a 24x24 inch softbox, a Sirui monopod, and the ND filter I already described before. I use the Sony a7R IV because it was a new camera and I want to see what it can do, and plus I wanted to see all that resolution in my image to see if I wanted to get this camera or not. I ended up buying it, so that's the reason why I use that camera. The reason why I use that lens is because I don't have another 50-1.4, and I actually do have Zeiss's 55-1.8, but I always find myself attracted to the wider apertures like f1.4 or f1.2. I don't have any of those lenses, but I would love some. And I actually did another photo shoot, I think 2 days before this photo shoot with Julia, and I used natural light, and I actually was really loving the quality that I was getting with the a7R IV and the 50-1.4 combo. When it comes to the lighting that I used the Godox AD200 Pro. It's one that I've been using over the original because it has a lower output of 1/256 on the low end, and I always appreciate having a wider power output available because it just gives you more options to work with when you shoot. The AD200 Pro can also be fine-tuned in 1/10 increments over the 1/3 increments of the original, and those two features alone are the reasons why I really like the AD200 Pro. I use the Godox AD200 Pro with the bulb head because the bulb head is going to be the best thing to use whenever you want to fill out a modifier such as a softbox, an octabox, beauty dish, or even an umbrella. It's going to be better than using the more direct Fresnel head, the speedlight shaped head. That's going to be better for whenever you need to use a magmod accessory or any other accessories that are used for speedlights. When it comes to the modifier that I use, I always use this modifier whenever I travel because it fits nice and small. It's a 24x24 inch softbox that I got back in 2014 for about $20 to $32 with the Godox S-Type bracket. I love this modifier. I use it whenever I need to travel, and it's not that expensive. I highly recommend it. The reason why I was able to connect the monopod to the S-Type bracket or other Bowens mount strobes is because of a small little attachment that costs about $5 and it's this size. It's called a light spigot, and I'll leave a link to it in the description area below, but you can search it on Amazon under light spigot. I've been using mine for a couple years now, so that's all you need to do to order to get the monopod connected to the S-Type bracket. I'm pretty sure I described everything, including the lighting and the gear and how I set up this photo shoot. So now let's move into Lightroom, where I'm going to show you guys all the pictures that I took from this photo shoot, all the straight out of camera shots, and the adjustments that I made, and the thought process involved as well. Alright, so what you're seeing on the screen right now is the image after I made some adjustments, some minor adjustments in my opinion, but I want to show you guys the straight out of camera so you guys can see exactly why I made those adjustments. What you're seeing now is the straight out of camera photo, and you guys can see that one thing that's very prevalent in the image is that it's very blue. There's a colder color temperature, and that's actually because of the ND filter that I use, and why I don't really use ND filters, because there's some cons here and there that I don't really like that you don't experience with high-speed sync. It was actually pretty simple to correct the blue color cast. All I had to do was increase the temperature from 4850 to around 5400, and increase the tint to about 26 out of a starting point of 24. I'm going to go ahead and kind of recreate the edits that I did to this image so you guys can see exactly that's what I did. There's no trickery there. I'm going to adjust the color temperature to be 5400, and already the image looks better. The tint to 26. Another thing that I always do is always bump up the saturation using the bottom section over here in the calibration area. I always increase the blue primary saturation slider to about 80. Sometimes 60, sometimes 80, but it really amps up those colors, and I really like that. So another thing I did was I enabled the profile corrections, which usually corrects the distortion and vignetting, but I love the vignetting, so I always bring it down to only a correction of around 10. I also sharpen the image. By default it's 40 on my computer, but I always bring it up to 60. I also mess with the hue, not the saturation or the luminance, and I want to show you guys that in the final image over here. You can see everything that I did to adjust the colors. I made the greens a little bit different. I made the yellows a little more different, and also the same thing with the blues and the aqua. When it comes to the basic exposure, I increased it only by 0.15. I didn't really need much exposure correction. And I also decreased the blacks to -25. I find that this gives the image a little bit more contrast and also makes those colors a little bit more rich. And the last thing I did was increase the vibrance to 20. Aside from all those different exposures and adjustments, I did do one more thing, which was I made the eyes a little bit brighter. So I'm gonna zoom into the eyes and you guys can see, you know, make fun of me all you want, but I missed the focus, but it wasn't too bad because I felt like the image wasn't too out of focus. I increased the eyes using the adjustment layer. I think it's called the brush adjustment layer. I'm blanking out right now, but I'll put it on the bottom of the screen exactly what I did. But it was an adjustment that I did to the eyes. You guys can see all that right there on the right there. I brought up the exposure, 5, contrast, all that stuff you can see on the side of the screen. But I'm going to show you guys exactly how it looked like without that adjustment. So here are the eyes, nice and colorful after the adjustments I made, but I'm going to show you guys how they look without that adjustment. So it's not that huge of a difference, but it is something that is significant to me. So that's why I adjusted the eyes to be a little bit brighter. Okay, so far what I did was I showed you guys a straight out of camera and the adjustments I made to that image, but I want to show you guys the build-up. So that's what I'm going to do right now. You can see on the screen right now, the first image I took in that spot is this one right here. I think I was probably just determining the composition and checking out the lighting or the lack of lighting, or maybe even using it as an example to show the photo look like without the lighting. You can see in this image that I started to add flash, but it's at a very low output. So this is something that I would say is not usable, but I started to correct that exposure, that lower output, by going ahead and raising the power. I think at full power, here it was probably around 1/8 power, maybe 1/16. So I increased the exposure, the output of the light, which brought up the exposure on her to a correct level. She was not ready here. Obviously, you can see that, so I'm gonna skip to the next image. I think at this point, I was just determining my composition. So that's what I was doing in this image, as well as this image, but it was until I took this image that I was like, okay, I do like this composition. Let me move a little bit more, but let's have her start to pose a little bit. That's why she picked up her hand. And that's why I took this image and this next image, which I really liked, and the next couple of images. I was really liking the exposure with the lighting and the composition, so I just needed to get a couple of variety of shots to really get an image that I really liked. Here's that same shot with the light off. These next shots, of course, are the behind the scenes that I always take for you guys so you can see exactly what was going on if I don't have any sort of footage going on. But I actually have footage and BTS, so you guys can appreciate both of those. My friend Dan Watson, again, the YouTuber that you guys need to check out, he was actually helping me out, and it was very crucial to this whole photo shoot because if he wasn't there, and if Sally wasn't there or Irene wasn't there, then I would have had no lighting, and that would be very devastating to me. So after I took this image, I wanted to go ahead and aim for a different type of image, just a slightly different type of image, because my whole purpose for going to this spot was to kind of make a little bit of a field of the area, which is what you're seeing in this photo right here, if it loads up. Yeah, so this photo right here. But I felt like there's a lot of foreground and I wanted to just focus on her. So that's what I did with the next images right here. So you can see in this image, I'm much closer to her. There's much more shallow depth of field because I'm at that closer distance. And there's less focus on the field that was in front of her. I really wanted to focus on her now, but I still wanted a little bit of a prop. So I had her pick a little bit of that straw, put it next to her face. But I felt like it was a little bit too in front of her face. And I also felt like her arm was just dead there. So I had her pick up in the next shot, which resulted in the shot that we're going to be talking about today, that we already talked about today, which is this shot right here. And in case you're wondering about the behind the scenes, if I haven't showed you guys yet, this is how the behind the scenes image looked like. I also have footage of this area, so you guys can check that out in the video that I already uploaded. And that's pretty much how I came from this image on the left here, where she's not ready or anything, and how I came to that final image on the right, which I really, really liked, and I ended up editing and sharing with you guys. Now let's go ahead and start talking about the editing, because it is a crucial step in my process, but it's one that I didn't do anything too drastic to this image, and you'll see right now. Okay, so here's the image, how it looks like at a Lightroom, but of course I'm gonna go ahead and describe everything that I did to come to that final result. The very first thing that I always do is I remove blemishes or anything distracting from the image that might be around her. So for this image, there was nothing distracting around her, but there were blemishes, which I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on now so you guys can see me remove them. And the way that I remove them is I open up a blank layer so that it's completely clean, and I go ahead and just get the spot removal tool or the patch tool. But I use the spot removal tool on the, spot healing brush tool on the face, and I always have sample all layers on so that you can sample the skin from the actual image and not this blank layer. Otherwise, you'd be sampling nothing. The very next thing I did was dodge and burn, which is actually my favorite part, and this is with the dodge and burn enabled. But I'm gonna go ahead and just show you guys exactly what I did in terms of the dodge, in terms of the burn. And the way that I can show you guys exactly what I did is hold down Alt and click on the dodge layer. And that's gonna give you everything that I did. So you guys can see on the face and the eyes, that's where a lot of the dodge was involved. and as well as on her arm here and in the hair. So everything that it looks kind of creepy right now while I'm looking at it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that off and show you guys the burn, and you guys can see everything that I did in terms of the burn. There's a lot on the fingers, on both fingers. I reduced the exposure on the shirt. It was a little too bright, and I did a lot of different burn on the face. So I'm gonna go ahead and just click that so you guys can see again how it looks like. So yeah, this is how it looks like without the burn, and this is with the burn. And I guess I did another step of burn over here with the burn copy, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it's because I wanted the freckles to show up a little bit more. So it's very subtle, but I didn't know how to make the freckles stand out without making them too obviously edited and brought out. So I'm gonna hold down Alt and click on the layer so you guys can see exactly what I did, and then click it off. So that was the dodge burn. The very next thing I did was frequency separation. So I'm gonna go ahead and it's off right now, and then click it on. And you guys can see that the most apparent thing that happened, to me at least, is the neck. I didn't want those necklines to be on there, so I went ahead and just took them off. I didn't do anything to the skin on the face, actually, which is something that usually a lot of people do when they use frequency separation. So I'm gonna go ahead and toggle it off and toggle it on. And you guys can see I didn't do anything to the skin on the face, but it's pretty much only here on the neck. Or actually, that's the next step right there. And also a little bit on the arm here and the shirt. So I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit. Yeah, and that's pretty much all I did with frequency separation. The very next things I do are really where the colors start to come in, and I added 2 selective color adjustment layers. I'm gonna show you guys the first one. This is a very drastic change, of course, and I wanna show you guys exactly how I did that with all the different adjustments here in the selective color red section. This is everything I did to the yellows, and pretty much whenever I adjust the different things here, all the different sliders, I pretty much just play around and see how I like the image, how it's getting affected. So don't feel like these adjustments are the ones that you need to use for your images, but do use the selective color adjustment layer and just play around with the sliders and see what you like. Apparently I also adjusted the greens, I also adjusted the cyans, the blues maybe, yep, the blues as well, the magentas, the whites, no. And I pretty much avoid the whites, the neutrals, and the blacks because I want to just focus on the colors. And when I adjust the blacks, the whites, and the neutrals, it kind of affects the image too much in different types of areas that I don't want it to be. I want it to be a little bit more organized, which is why I adjusted or made another adjustment layer, a selective color adjustment layer right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and toggle that second selective color adjustment layer, and you guys can see it is a difference. There is a subtle difference. And the way that I was able to do that, those little differences, is I adjusted the whites with the different things I did here on the screen. You know, the cyans, you know, minus, magenta minus, added yellows, and subtracted those blacks. And another thing I did was adjusted those reds. I had initially thought I wanted them to really kind of shine out, but I felt like they were too overpowering. So I reduced them with the selective color adjustment layer. The very next thing apparently is I did a little bit more of dodging, and I can't exactly see where they are, so I'm going to hit the Alt, click on the layer, so you can see that I did it apparently on the face. So let me go ahead and just zoom in on the face now so you guys can see where I dodged. And let's see if we can see it together. I'm going to toggle it off and toggle it on. Okay, you can see it on the cheek here. That's where I wanted it to just be a little bit more of, a little bit brighter. So the next layer is called Color Fix. And the reason why I have this layer is because usually when you dodge and burn, sometimes you might shift the colors a bit too much, and sometimes you want those colors to be more unified. So that's what I did with the Color Fix layer. I got a blank layer. I hit I sampled some of the colors that I wanted to be fixed a little bit, and then I painted it over the colors that I thought were a little bit adjusted too much, and then I changed the blending mode of that layer to color, which fixed that color to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and toggle it off, toggle it on. And you guys, it's very, very subtle, so you just have to really focus on the image, and so you can see exactly what I did. So it's very subtle, so let's move on to the next thing. So in this next step, I added a lot of different adjustments, and I just grouped them together. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how those adjustments look together. Right there, there's a lot more contrast, and there's a little bit of a color tint to it. So I'm gonna show you guys real quickly exactly what I did. I added a color balance layer to just tweak the colors just a little bit differently. Right there, those are all the different adjustments that I did to that. I also added a little bit of a color fill, which just basically adds a whole layer of color over the image. And then I changed the blending mode to screen, I believe. Yep, and I changed it to just 2% opacity. Otherwise, it'd just get really weird like that right there. So I just changed it to 2%. So the color is just very much a hint of color throughout the image. And I also, sometimes what I do for extra contrast is I get a levels adjustment layer and I raise the black right there to 6 or sometimes a little bit higher. And then I add a little bit more of brightness throughout the image, which is what I did in this step right here. It's very, very subtle again. So that's exactly what I did in the last step there. So I'm going to toggle it off and then toggle it on so you guys can see exactly what happened. And that's pretty much everything. This last adjustment layer up here on top is just what I use whenever I dodge and burn. I always have a black and white adjustment layer, and I change the different types of the reds and the yellows. Yeah, this stuff right here, I always change the reds and the yellows to be a little bit darker so you can really highlight those blemishes on the skin so you can fix them with dodge and burn. And that's pretty much everything I did to this image. This video is probably too long for my liking, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned a lot, especially about ND filters, because it's very crucial to really maximizing all the light that comes out of your light. But I just prefer the convenience of high-speed sync. That's why I use it. If you have any questions at all whatsoever, let me know in the comment section below so I can help you out and answer your questions. I'm trying my best to think of anything that I might have forgotten, but I can't think of anything. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a like and share it if you think it's very, very helpful. And also subscribe. It doesn't hurt to subscribe. Yeah, take care guys, and I'll see you in the very next video. Oh, also, if you haven't already seen the behind the scenes video for this shoot and a couple of other photo shoots that I did using the Sony a7R IV, go ahead and check that out with the link in the top right corner of the screen right now or in the description area below. All right, now take care, and I'll see you in the next video.